Question. Why were the last two generations, Millennials and Gen Z, so ill prepared for life as adults? Does anyone believe that Generation Alpha will be any different? Why are we seeing historic rates of anxiety, depression, suicide, alcohol, and drug use? We're doing a great disservice to our kids, and by we, I mean parents, guardians, caregivers, those adults responsible for preparing the next generation for adulthood. Now let's consider the past for a second before we look forward. Why was the greatest generation referred to as the greatest? That name was given because that group of individuals not only survived the Great Depression, but World War II as well. And I'm not just talking about the men. The women of that generation suffered just the same as men did. Matter of fact, I could make an argument that the women suffered more. During World War II, approximately 200,000 women supported the troops in every country where men fought. At home, here in the States, approximately 6 million women worked in wartime factories, while somewhere around 3 million volunteered with the Red Cross. Both men and women of the greatest generation earned that distinction. So when I say that the greatest generation suffered in some way, shape, or form, I mean everyone in that generation. Now, that generation was called the greatest because they dealt with extreme adversity and they overcame it. Generally speaking, every subsequent generation has encountered a diminishing degree of adversity in their lives, to their detriment. I'm going to repeat that. Every subsequent generation since the Great Generation, the greatest, has dealt with a diminishing degree of adversity while growing up. The baby boomers started this trend, believing that by making their children's lives a bit easier, they were doing their children a favor. Wrong. Generation X parents doubled down on that concept. I read somewhere that twice as many Gen X parents had college degrees compared to their parents, the baby boomers. That made them smarter, right? No, not when it came to raising their kids. What those Gen X parents hoped to achieve for their children was to give them an advantage by helping them get ahead. In my opinion, the get ahead efforts resulted in their children, the millennials, being left behind. The millennial generation was the start of a significant decline in the number of happy, well-adjusted, independent adults contributing to society in some positive manner. It appears today that every subsequent generation has only gotten worse. Why? Why is the question that needs to be answered. Why are independent, confident, good decision-making adults becoming so rare? The answer, in my opinion, goes back to the greatest generation. That generation had to live at what I call the boundaries of their abilities. They were forced by their circumstances to deal with adversities that would physically, intellectually, and spiritually crush today's average adult from what I call the declining generations, every generation since the boomers. Now, it's only at the boundaries of your abilities that you grow. Challenging yourself, whether it's your mind, your intellectual strength, your body, physical strength, or spiritual, your emotional strength. It's only by expanding the outer edge of your abilities that you become bigger, better, stronger in all the ways that matter. How do you know you're at the boundaries of your abilities? You'll know because that's where things get difficult, painful, distressing. I don't believe the average parent of the greatest generation understood the psychological benefits of raising their children at the boundaries of their abilities. Those parents were just trying to deal with the hand they were dealt. Now, parents since the boomers have done everything in their power to remove adversity from their children's lives, thinking that would make life easier for their children and result in their children getting a leg up on their peers. And that was wrong. Pushing your children to live at the boundaries of their abilities will result in adversity for them. It will cause them pain, intellectual, physical, and emotional. However, it will drastically increase the likelihood that a child raised in that manner will be an independent, confident, good decision maker. An ICD adult recognizes and accepts the challenges of being an adult. An ICD adult is best prepared to deal with those challenges. The end result is a happier, healthier, well-adjusted adult. I mean, isn't that what every parent wants for their children? Now, what I've said so far shouldn't be a shocker for anyone. Most adults understand that the easiest path is almost never the best path when it comes to building strength of mind, strength of body, strength of spirit. Now I'll say something that might shock many of you. I mentioned it in my first video. You don't start challenging your child to live at the boundaries of her abilities in high school. You don't start in middle school. You don't even start in elementary school. You start it in the first year of their life. Your baby should be challenged at the boundaries of her abilities. She needs to be challenged at those boundaries as a baby to begin establishing the foundation that's necessary for her to deal with the challenges she will face as an adult. Now, you might think that's ridiculous, but let me give you a few examples how I did this with my son when he was a baby. When my son began to roll around on his belly, pre-crawling, I would often place things just out of reach. I wasn't abusing him or teasing him. I was trying to do a few things. First, I was challenging him physically. Crawl if you want that toy. If you have to build muscle and coordination to get from point A to point B. Crawl for the toy. Earn it. Second, I was teaching him that it takes effort to get what you want. Think about that. I was teaching a 6 or 7 month old baby that in life you have to work for success. I was laying the foundation for that. I was teaching a baby that concept. If you could see my son today, you would know I succeeded. Now, here's another example. My son has developed an amazing palate. He's always willing to try all kinds of different exotic foods, stuff I'd never eat. Now, I believe this is the case because I fed him anything and everything when he was a baby. Wasabi? Why not? I gave him a watered-down mix, but I saw no reason not to have him try it. Virtually anything I had on my plate was on my wife's plate, was on a friend's plate. I'd put it in front of him. Did he like everything? Of course not. A whole lot of that stuff came right back out, and that was fine. I expected it. What I achieved was getting my baby boy to expect the unexpected when it came to food. He never knew if what he was about to eat would taste like burnt leather or chocolate pudding. Ultimately, I hope he learned eventually, I think, that when you push up against your boundaries of your abilities, you risk some distasteful things, but the reward is expanding your world. In this specific case, his palate. Now, this part is very important. Challenging your child to live at the boundaries of their abilities does not mean forcing adult concepts down their throats. For example, why is it we don't teach calculus to 5th graders? Because they're not intellectually ready for it. Why don't we encourage middle schoolers, 6th, 7th, 8th graders to be sexually active? Because they're not emotionally ready for that. Although most of the adults will agree that calculus for 5th graders and intimacy for middle schoolers is wrong, far too many of those adults will push adult concepts on their children long before their children are ready to deal with those issues. Too many parents believe that challenging their children by introducing adult issues into their young lives helps them get ahead. I mentioned get ahead before. I hate get ahead. I hate the concept. If you want to virtually guarantee that your child will grow up to be an intellectual and emotional mess, by all means, force adult topics on them when they're just children. I'm going to have a few videos in the future I'll put out getting much deeper into that concept. Now, here's probably one of the most critically important things to understand before challenging your little one to live at the boundaries of their abilities. Every child is unique. You might say, that's silly, everyone knows that. Well, if every parent understands their child is unique, why do so many parents spend so much time comparing their child to other children? It's wrong, super wrong. If your son or daughter works their butt off and gets an 87 on a math test, but all kinds of other students in the class got a 90 or above, that means nothing. That 87 might show great progress for your child. It might be at the top of your child's abilities. The fact that other students got better grades is entirely irrelevant to the success of your child. How many times have you seen a parent diminish their own child's accomplishments by comparing them to some other kid? Now, here's a story I think drives that concept home. My son ran track in high school. At one of his meets, I'm sitting next to 2 women. On the track, the girls were running the 1600. Almost every young lady had finished when the last 2 runners came running down the final stretch. One of the ladies next to me stood up, started cheering. One of those runners was obviously her daughter. It seemed to me like mom was, a bit over the top in all that cheering. But when the next to last girl crossed the finish line, she looks up at her mom, raises her arms up, and gives two big thumbs up. The mom turns to her friend and says, she just beat her PR, a personal record in running. Now, I look back to the track and I see her daughter with a huge grin on her face. My first thought was, that's a future ICD adult. It didn't matter to her that she almost finished last. What mattered to her was that she had just run the fastest she had ever done, the 1600. That young lady had pushed up against the boundaries of her abilities and broken through. That's success. I wonder where that young lady is today, because I bet she's doing well. Now, your child is unique. Stop comparing the results of their efforts with those of other children's. Stop it. Stop comparing your child's accomplishments to other children. The boundaries of your child's abilities are unique to them. As long as they are pushing to expand their own boundaries, they are succeeding. When a person accomplishes something that they previously repeatedly failed at, that's a feeling that builds the strengths that matter: mind, body, spirit. That's the core of an independent, confident, good decision maker. Lastly, stop trying to build your child's future and focus on building their foundation. That's why you start building your ICD adult when they're just a baby. We have young adults with resumes that reflect incredible accomplishments compared to the prior generations. But these same young adults lack the physical strength, intellectual strength, and emotional strength to handle the challenges they will face on a daily basis as an adult. On paper, today's young adults appear to be amazingly successful winners from every perspective, and yet they are failing at life. How can that be? Outwardly amazing accomplishments, inwardly broken shell of a human being. Take an honest look at the 20, 30, 40-year-olds you know and consider whether they are paper successes or are they independent, confident, good decision makers. I want to see more ICD adults. When I need the services of a doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, when I need a mechanic, an electrician, a police officer, or a plumber, I'm looking for a skilled, talented, hardworking, ambitious individual who cares about what they do, who enjoys what they do, and gets some meaning from what they do. Living life as an ICD adult makes all the difference to your child and to everyone else around them. If you think something I've said today is worth sharing with someone, please do. Raising an independent, confident, good decision maker is in everyone's best interest. Thanks for taking your time to listen.